Hospital porters, pride and dignity, stop the New World Order, welcome to Panwo TV, and welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2020, Trump on Roswell. Trump on Roswell, what am I talking about? That sounds fascinating, doesn't it? And it is. It absolutely is. The God Emperor himself has been saying some rather strange and quite exciting things about UFOs lately. I mean, he has since he became president, before even, but that's what he's been saying since then, since he got into the Oval Office, is pretty incredible. Like, for example, I think I've covered this before, that he actually has commented on the ATIP footage. He said it's one hell of a video. That's it. Now, about 18 months ago, he was confronted by ABC News, and they asked him about the whole ATIP thing and TTSA, and he says, well, you know, the Pentagon. I want the Pentagon to think whatever they want to think. And they said, and the reporter said, "What about you, Mr. President? What do you think?" He says, "Do I believe? Not particularly." And he says, "Oh, I want to talk about the great pilots and what they have discovered and things like this." So this is odd. This is an odd kind of delegation, because he seems to divert the whole conversation from the subject of ATIP and TTSA, which he mentions he has been briefed on, and he would have been briefed on being president, and then he sort of shifts it onto the pilots and the Pentagon. He says, let them think what they want to think. It's one hell of a video, do I believe? Not particularly. It's a bit non-committal. Now, but it's different. It's different to what you normally get from statesmen when this subject comes up, and we know they know more than they're saying. I mean, some of them admitted it. Paul Hellyer, for example, Fife Symington, governor of Arizona, they've admitted, firstly they admitted they know more than they've been told, and then in the case of Symington they confessed, and Hellyer has now become a very, very dedicated ufologist, an ex-politician. What they normally say, what politicians like Trump in his position would normally say when confronted with UFOs, is they say, yeah, well, we've had a little look into them, and we've discovered they're of no real defence significance. We know that a lot of them are birds, they're weather balloons, they're kites, they're atmospheric conditions. The vast majority can be explained that way, 99.999%. The tiny minority, the tiny tiddly tipsy little minority that can't be explained that way, well, we think they probably would be with a little bit more investigation, but seeing as they're not really a problem and they don't seem to have any real substance to them, it's not something we should bother with. That's your average governmental response to the UFO questions. Why didn't Trump do that? See, Trump didn't come out and say, "Oh yeah, it's real, it's all real. Oh yes, aliens, disclosure." So he didn't do that, and he didn't give the little textbook kind of the textbook cliche reply that I just gave you an example of. He said he kind of took the third way. And I do wonder why, and more so, I mean, another thing, he didn't make a joke out of it either. He seemed to take it seriously, and of course, another way that politicians will get around this question is just joking. And you see this. Do you remember that amazing video of Richard D. Hall confronting David Cameron just before he became Prime Minister? This is way back in like 2010, I think. And he says, and he sort of like laughs it off. Do you remember? As it happens, I doubt if Cameron knew anything about it. He's probably being sincere. I mean, he's an idiot. The man's a complete moron. But I suspect he was being sincere. Now, Trump. It didn't end there, because very recently, in fact, last Sunday when it was Father's Day, that's the Sunday before last, President Trump did an impromptu interview, did a sort of casual interview, and with well, it wasn't an interview, it was more like just a discussion, a film discussion with his son Donald Jr. And he said it, and Don Jr. asked him, would you give us the truth about Roswell? That's what I want to know. She said, one thing I want to know more than anything else, Dad, I don't think he called him Mr. President, will you give the truth about Roswell? As you as president, will you give the public tell us what actually happened with the aliens and stuff like this? And Trump said, he said, so many people ask me that. I get questions from people like that all the time. I won't talk about it, what I know about this, but I'll tell you, it is interesting. If that had been Obama or Clinton or David Cameron, Theresa May, or the Bushes, any of these other people, what would have been the answer? Oh, Roswell, yeah, is that a kind of little out-of-the-way place in New Mexico, isn't it? Yeah, I know there's some cattle ranches there, you know, there's some rodeos and things like that, but not really heard much about it. I know they have some kind of tourist industry because of some legend of aliens crashing there in the 1940s, but you know, I'm president, I've got more important things to deal with than these fantasies. Good luck to them though, you know, fair play. Again, Trump took the third option. What's going on here, ladies and gentlemen? What's going on? I mean, there was a news bite sort of referring to this. It was kind of like one of these review news bites that came afterwards, and they describe it as being jocular. They just said, oh, it was a joking exchange between President Trump and his son Donald Jr. It didn't sound very joking to me. He sounded pretty serious. Even though, of course, it was his son, so obviously they were having quite a casual conversation. But all the same, it seems this broke the norm. This was a deviation from what politicians are supposed to do and what they're supposed to say. And that's been Trump's career ever since he got into the White House, quite frankly. And is it going to carry on? Are we going to see more groundbreaking responses from the God Emperor about this? I mean, it may all depend whether he gets re-elected in November. Obviously, I'm praying he will be. Interestingly, do you like the new lighting effects? I've changed the lighting effects slightly on this particular studio area of mine. I've got the light over there instead of up there. So let me know if you prefer it, if you can see me better. You know, some of you might not want to, obviously. You know. So, what else has been going on? Well, that's not the only thing. I mean, I really can't wait to make a video reporting to you that President Trump has come out with something else about Roswell. But whether he'll get re-elected, I mean, I'll be covering the whole presidential election thing nearer the time. It's only a few months away now. But I'll make some more videos and live streams and things about that close to the time. Okay. What else has happened? Well, on the subject of Richard D. Hall, the Rich Planet Tour has been cancelled. Yeah, the Richard's 2020 tour was obviously cancelled because of the COVID-19 pandemic hysteria, scaremongering, whatever you might think about it. I've covered that on other videos. And that's a great shame because I love going along to Richard's shows. I really do. I mean, they're really interesting. Richard's a really good presenter, and it's not just actually for Richard's show. I go along to meet kindred spirits. You know, the people in the audience. It's a social event. You know, in fact, I went to well, it's 2018. I went to see Richard's show 4 times at 4 different venues. It's just I'm sure Richard saw me in the audience and thinks, he's an MI5 agent. He's come to spy on me or something like that. But no, honestly, the only reason I went along was because people kept inviting me, and I went along just to sort of keep them company and to meet other people. But it was good. As I said, I enjoyed Richard's show. I think it's really good. Now, what Richard has done is kind of what I've done. Do you remember my webinar that I did last week or a couple of weeks ago? The video's on my channel anyway. He's been doing in the internet land what you can't do in the real land. So he's done a virtual tour. And it's very like the ones he does normally. It has the introductory segment. He has a stage set up and everything. So it's like being in the audience when he does his tour. It's obviously not the same as being there, you know, but it's still pretty good. Now, he covers a lot of subjects in this particular tour. I'm not going to go into all of them, but one I do want to bring up because it's related to the UFO Disclosure issue, and that is Bob Lazar. Richard discusses Bob Lazar on this particular program. Now, what he does is he decides, because of course there's a lot of controversy over Bob Lazar, so Richard is once again going to try and settle the controversy using his textbook method, which is statement analysis. This is actually a popular request from his audience. His viewers actually wrote to him and said, Richard, can you get Peter Hyatt to study Bob Lazar? So he does. He gets Peter Hyatt. Now he's also, there's another one, a Geordie lady called Genevieve Lewis. She's the one who did the statement analysis on the Manchester bombings, which was very incriminating indeed. Not just because of the statement analysis, because it's backed up by other evidence, and I'll come to that point again in a moment. But so Peter Hyatt does this analysis of Bob Lazar and the various things he does, and his conclusion is Bob Lazar is a liar. Case closed, is it? Maybe not. And this is quite something, because Richard D. Hall, he's been doing this for quite a long time. I first met him in 2010 at the Probe conference. He wasn't as famous back then as he is now, and he talks a lot about how he got into the subject. He'd only been doing it for about 2 years, so he started more or less the same time as me. And he said, I mean, it was 2006 I started. Doesn't matter. I've forgotten. But Richard said that, you know, the Bob Lazar issue was something that really got him seriously involved in alternative thought and research and the other things that he does. It was the Bob Lazar situation and the Bob Lazar story that inspired him. As Richard always said, you know, even though Bob Lazar can't prove he went to university, you can tell by the things he says that he has some kind of scientific training. And Richard himself is scientifically trained. He is a electrical engineer. So Bob Lazar, so he took Bob Lazar seriously. In fact, Richard is, as you know, if you watch regularly the Rich Planet show, you'll know that Richard has actually coined his name as an adjective for anything that is strange or out of this world. He goes, very Bob Lazar, that. It's very Bob Lazar. And so what Richard has concluded, or what he suspects based on what Hyatt's analysis of Bob Lazar is that Bob Lazar, when he was at Area 51, he did not encounter extraterrestrial objects. What he did instead was he worked on something similar, but it's not extraterrestrial. And of course, this is referring to the secret space program. That's what this means, the secret space program. Now, so this is what Richard suspects happened. He's not certain, but this is what he suspects is the case. Now, so what was he doing? What was Bob Lazar going out on TV to do then? Lying about aliens. And Richard says that the purpose is to disinformation to cover up the secret space program. So you just go on about it being aliens, and then no one will suspect it's actually secret spacecraft. Now, I've addressed this subject before, not Bob Lazar specifically, but I have addressed this issue of disinformation before. It's actually not an original idea. In fact, I'd say it's rather fashionable at the moment to say this, and many others have said this, and I've discussed this on the programs on this particular channel many times. There's this idea that what I call this fashionable idea. It's popularised by people like Mark Pilkington, Brian Allen, etc., etc. UFOs are essentially a piece of engineered neo-mythology that has been created by the intelligence agencies as a psychological warfare tactic. It's intended to launder their more down-to-earth secrets, such as the secret space program. So basically what would happen is you put stuff up about, you put things out there about aliens, and people will look and say, wow, it's aliens, and that will stop them going, oh look, it's a secret aeroplane, it's a spy plane, it's an anti-gravity craft, things like that. This actually came, do you remember Adam Curtis's hypernormalization? There's a little segment in there all about Mark Pilkington and his ideas. It has some clips from Pilkington's documentary, The Mirage Men, which I've talked about. Mirage Men. I've actually reviewed the book as well, and a lot of this is on Hapanwo. I've written on the Hapanwo blogs as well. Now, I think this is not really plausible. It's if you think about it, you're talking about a scam where you draw someone's attention towards something with the ultimate objective of distracting it away. So Bob Lazar's out there to draw people's attention towards Area 51 with his story, with the ultimate objective of distracting their attention away from what's there. Now that is a very risky gambit. It could backfire in many, many different ways. It doesn't make sense. It's rather like if you robbed a bank, right, and you ran off with all the money. Well, you might decide to bury it somewhere. Okay, you should bury your stash. And now, what would you do once you buried your stash? There's several things you could do. You could go away and not tell anyone about it. Or you could do, what you could do is you could try to cover it up according to the reasoning of this theory. Which what you do is you stand there, you put your striped jersey on and your cloth cap and your mask around your eyes, and you jump up and down on top of where you buried your stash. Every time a police car drives past, you jump up and down and you wave a placard in the air, and the placard says, "There's no money buried here, just unicorn bones." That's not a very good way to cover up your stash, is it? It wouldn't be very long until some smart copper, what's that guy doing? And they work out what was going on. And that is why I think it's very unlikely that Bob Lazar was put out there to tell stories about aliens when there aren't real aliens. What I think is more likely happening is, well, firstly, I don't know specifically whether Bob Lazar is telling the truth or lying. I think he's probably telling the truth. But of course, the statement analysis says otherwise. Well, the thing about statement analysis is it is a very, very useful tool, but it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. You can use it as a part of your investigation, but you can't use it as your investigation, as a substitute for all other fields of study. It seems like that Richard is doing that. He does that sometimes. He certainly did that with the Rendlesham Forest. If you remember, in my video, it was the Shield Tribunal one. In my Shield Tribunal video, I discuss a program Richard did about Larry Warren and the other Rendlesham Forest witnesses. And indeed, I've done an article about this on her Panama Voice, if you want to check that out. Because he says he wants to clear up the Rendlesham Forest controversy, but in order to do so, he doesn't consult with me or with Gary Heseltine or any of the main researchers into this field. Instead, he turns his back on us completely, and he just wheels in Peter Hyatt, and he gets Peter Hyatt to examine the testimony. And at the end of it, he says, "Right, well, I think I've worked out what's gone on here." You know, and he comes to a conclusion based on that alone. It's not good enough. It's not. I don't think you could go to court with Peter Hyatt's testimony alone. If there was again a bank robbery, let's use the analogy. You had a bank robbery, and you know, the police come up and they round people up, they round everyone up in the area, and there's some old lady walking past with a Zimmer frame at the time of the robbery, and they put her down in front of Peter Hyatt and she fails the test. You cannot go to court, you can't prosecute that woman based on that evidence alone. You wouldn't get a conviction with that evidence alone. It could only be used in conjunction with other evidence. I don't know exactly what the legal status is of Peter Hyatt's work. I don't know exactly whether it can be submitted as evidence in court. I know that polygraphs can't be submitted as evidence in court. Interestingly, Larry Warren passed a polygraph test. Everyone's going, "Oh no, that's nothing, that's nothing, that's nothing." But along comes Peter Hyatt, and they watch the Rich Planet show, and they go, "That's it, we told you Larry Warren was a fraud from the beginning." You see, I think it's confirmation bias here for certain individuals. You know, the ones who have been attacking Larry Warren for personal reasons. So I'm a bit dubious. I'm also dubious about Richard. Another thing that Richard does is he refers to the Rendlesham Forest incident in this particular virtual tour. He said that well, he refers to a channel. It was a channel I checked, and I'm already subscribed to it actually. I haven't seen the video, but there was a video where someone interviews a supposed insider, a person who worked at the base in 1980. And they tell a remarkable story. The story is that the alien story was simply a fable that was put out to cover up something else. Now this was an illicit an illicit manoeuvre involving hazardous materials. Basically, there's a long story behind this, but basically there was an attempt to transport something hazardous. Maybe this is what the sensitive thing, as Richard calls it in the Rendlesham Forest documentary he did, and that something went wrong, and there was a big hoo-ha, and everyone was scared it was going to be a scandal. There was going to be a scandal, and loads and loads of people were going to find out. So they said, "I know what we'll do to prevent this scandal. We'll draw everyone's attention towards the forest by a story about aliens. There we are. We're safe. Secret kept." But again, you know, I have to call that into serious question for the reasons I've stated. I just don't. I don't see how it works. It doesn't make sense. Again, what I think what would happen in the case of Bob Lazar and these other instances, if there is some kind of secret, like a secret space program or something, the way the government covers it up is just not to say anything about it at all to anyone ever who's outside the program and doesn't have a need to know. The only time they will bring in disinformation would be if something does leak out. If something does leak out, then you've got a problem, and you need to get it back in you get the genie back in the bottle. In which case you might use a disinformation of that particular kind. I think in that scenario, where something is already in the public domain, or entering the public domain, or threatens to get into the public domain. My dehumidifier is making strange noises, don't worry. It must be all hot air I'm breathing. In that situation, you know, a bit of some kind of disinformation of this kind might be effective. For example, sorry, Colin Wolford, I think that's what the alien autopsy might be. I've done an entire video about that. No link in the description box, you can find it. And I've also done I've done several videos about Bob Lazar. Another thing about Bob Lazar, Richard said, "Oh no, I do think he worked for Naval Intelligence, because when because he has this document that says he worked for the Department of Naval Intelligence. Therefore, yes, he did work for the government, and he worked in the Department of Naval Intelligence. Therefore, he's not lying about that. He's just lying about what he did, and he actually worked in the secret space program, or was putting information out about the secret space program, and really, he's putting information out about aliens to cover it up." The problem with that is that Bob Lazar's never claimed to work for a naval intelligence organisation. You see, there's no such thing as the Department of Naval Intelligence in the overt world, in the US Navy or anywhere in the US government. There's no such thing. There is an Office of Naval Intelligence, but not a Department of Naval Intelligence. Yeah, the Department of Naval Intelligence comes up in Bob Lazar's tale. It also comes up in the alien interview, which means I think the DNI is actually it's probably a code name for something in the black budget world. So that's another reason why I think this lends credibility to Lazar's story. It really does. So let's move on. Project Blue Book. I've got an update for you. There's yeah, of course I've discussed Project Blue Book before. I think I brought it up in the last UFO Disclosure video, but also it comes up, of course it comes up because I did an entire series of reviews of in each individual episode. Do you remember? Yeah, and I think it's great. And of course, as you know from the previous video, history has axed it. It's they decided to get rid of it. Now it's not because it's not successful. It's actually very successful. 2.9 million views average every week. So for a program that type on that kind of platform, 2.9 million views is its viewers. It's very, very high. It's very good ratings indeed. But they've dropped it. They dropped it basically because they just say we're moving away from scripted drama. We want to just concentrate on documentaries. So okay, so history ditched Project Blue Book. That's a shame. But Project Blue Book's, you know, as I said, 2.9 million viewers. Not to mention the number of people who watched it in terms of the online on the players, and also the various syndications, because it had many syndications, including a run on UK Sci-Fi Channel, of course, here in the UK. But they're actually, David O'Leary, the creator, he's actually quite pleased because he can now do a deal for the next season, because they're not giving up on it. It's as I predicted, it's going to continue. But he wants to get somewhere else, because one thing he said, he was a bit annoyed with history, and this is the commercial breaks. Now, here in the UK, we have adverts on TV, except the BBC, and usually in an hour-long programme, you usually get about one ad break. But in one or two ad breaks in an hour-long programme. But in America, it's like about 5 or 6. And so you have to write into the script. You have to write these commercial breaks into the script. In other words, have a scene ending at a particular point where a commercial break will start, and then beginning again afterwards. And I mean, I know this. I mean, if you've watched an American import on TV in Britain, if you watch an American import like Dallas or something, you may have noticed that suddenly there'll be a scene, and suddenly it will cut to black, and you'll get like a blank segment, and then another scene will start again, but it'll maybe just replay a few seconds from the previous scene or something like that. That's because of the commercial breaks they have on American TV, which they don't have in British TV. So O'Leary is quite pleased. He wants to do season 3 of Project Blue Book on a platform where he doesn't have to bother with this. He doesn't have this interruption in his creative flow. As you know what, it's all set up and ready to go. Apparently, they've done the script, and they've completed the script for an entire 10 episode season. Plus, they've done a storyboard. So really, that's the major pre-production work done. What they have to do now simply is get, design some sets, get some casting stuff done, stuff like that, and then film it. So really, Project Blue Book is homeless at the moment, but not for very long. I'm sure. I imagine they'll be bloody fighting over it. Various networks will be fighting over this series. We are going to see season 3. I'm absolutely certain. I'm positive of that. And what's more, I covered this in the previous video in this series, I think, but obviously I'll be reviewing that when the time comes. And they've given us some clues. For example, not many, they don't want any spoilers, but they are going to cover the 1954 world flap, and this is an interesting period. In the year 1954, there was a vast increase across the world of UFO sightings. It's a major UFO. It's a major UFO era that year. And it's also going to have the conspiratorial element to it, of course. Because that was one of the... That was what's so good about season 1 and 2. Now, they're already thinking about season 4. Now, it's really great, because, of course, the real J. Allen Hynek, the actual episodes are based on real-life UFO events which he investigated. And the thing is, Hynek investigated between 1947 and 1969. J. Allen Hynek investigated over 12,000 UFO sightings. So there's an almost infinite supply of inspiration there, isn't there? Right, crop circles. Now, do you know what? It was mid-May when I did my last video in the series UFO Disclosure 2020. No crop circles has appeared, and this is interesting. Now, I said this actually before the season began. What effect would the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown have on the crop circle phenomenon? What effect would it have? Because this is really interesting, because of course we're dealing with the controversy of where these things come from. Are crop circles created by guys with planks wandering around fields, or are the little green men involved? Yes, I know you do them, Russell. You always boast about it, all right? He's such a big head, he really is. Of course, with the lockdown, you have essentially a very good experimental control, because far fewer man-made circles are going to be emerged, maybe none at all. Now, if the answer is none at all, and none of the crop circle making teams can get to fields and do any circle making, then if any crop circle appears, it's far less likely to be made by human hands. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I'm getting at here? Normally you have this massive amount of data, does hundreds of circles, and you know that most of them are man-made, but then you get the odd one or two which doesn't quite fit in. If you ever see, like, again, the Rich Planets Secrets of the Fields documentary, David Caton, the Leavengood study and people like that, which means But yeah, there's fewer crop circles. Now a crop circle has appeared. I mean, the first one of the year didn't appear until May the 29th. I think it's the latest start ever in the season. And it's this, I call it the broken egg. It's this kind of like big splat with like little blobs coming off it, all around 9 blobs coming off it. It looks like someone's just dropped an egg. There's been a couple more since then. There's been a couple more. Every time, I mean, I won't say I looked a couple of weeks ago. I mean, every time I go back, if I tell you a figure now, it'll be out of date by the time you finish watching this film. But of course, Sir Matthew Williamshire has been doing his usual stuff, getting his drone out and flying it over the circles and capturing some amazing footage, stunning footage. So yeah, check out his channel, Truth Seeker 666, and I think he's got another one as well. But oh, he's got several channels, but you know, he has a special channel now dedicated to his drone footage. Now, I came across something which I didn't. It's not actually news. It's not something new. It actually came out in 2015, but I've come across it for the first time. I'm surprised it took me that long. But I did mention this on the Her Panmo Voice blog. So I just decided I might better bring it up on this video too. UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, has in 2015 they made a very strange video. It's only just over a minute long. It's a little short mini documentary. Sorry, mini drama. Just a short mini story. As I say, just over a minute long. No dialogue. It was made in Chile apparently, and it's a poignant story about a young boy who starts in a new school for the first time, and when he stands up at the front of the class to say hello to everyone, the children stare at him in disgust and horror. It's very obvious from looking at him, looking at his facial features, that he is an alien or an ET human hybrid. And the children, they're very nasty to him. They play malicious pranks on him, like children could be little bastards. They really can. They tease him, and he can't make friends with them and things like that. But he draws pictures on the chalk blackboard of aliens, little UFOs and aliens, and his bedclothes and the decorations in his room are of UFOs and aliens, which tells you where he comes from. And he eats different food as well. Like he eats a piece of fruit that looks like an apple, except it's sort of silvery grey in colour, a silvery blue or silvery grey in colour. And his hands exude slime, green slime, which again repels the other children away from him. But then he demonstrates, during a school performance, during a school play, he demonstrates his telekinetic powers. He can actually make objects move, and he goes like that. And the performers on stage rise up into the air, and the children stare at him in wonder. And then they accept him. Then they learn to respect him, and they accept him. And the tagline is, "Don't miss an opportunity to change your life. Don't miss an opportunity to meet someone new." And I thought, that's an odd little video. Now, I mean, it could. Again, this could be like a hidden meaning. It could be like just symbolic of something. For example, refugees. It could be that children may find themselves going to school with a new child who comes from a different country, speaks a different language, is racially different, etc., etc. In fact, this happened to me when I was in primary school. When I was a little kid in primary school, I'm showing my age now, there was a little boy in my class who joined my class from Uganda. And his family were living in Britain because they fled the Idi Amin regime. And of course I'd never met anyone from that country before, and took some getting used to. But what if the symbolism of the ET child in the class is actually meant to be more literal? What if when they actually show an ET human hybrid or ET child in the classroom, they actually mean exactly that? Michael Salla has done a very interesting article about this, and he also talks about how the Vatican has been saying things about aliens, about how priests should baptize. You know, the Pope has said that it's okay for priests to baptize aliens, and I know for a fact that well, I don't know for a fact, but I very strongly suspect that there's some aliens that have been given the last rites. If you know about the Cape Girardeau incident of 1941, and the Reverend Mann, he gave some aliens at a crash site the last rites. There's also, of course, the Aurora Incident, which features, which is about an alien that's been buried in a church graveyard. 1897 that was, sorry, 1897. It's a cemetery, not a church graveyard, but... So it just makes you wonder. I mean, do you remember, I brought this up years ago in a video long ago, about how in British schools they've been staging alien crashes, flying saucer crashes in the school playground, fake ones. It's a kind of role-playing thing with the children. It was very elaborate. They had like props with aliens and like dry ice, and the fire brigade and the police were involved. You know, I covered it in detail in a previous video. I can't remember which one. So it just makes you wonder, what are they teaching our kids? And finally, Scarlett Moffatt. Now, I saw something amazing about a lady called Scarlett Moffatt. Now, I must admit, I've not heard of Scarlett Moffatt before this story came on, because she's a reality TV star, and I'm not a fan of reality TV. And she appears on Loose Women, which is a bloody awful programme, terrible programme. But she comes on the show to tell the panel of 4 women about her belief in aliens. She says she's believed in aliens since the age of 6. She believes she's been abducted. Her dad used to take her out to crop circles when she was a little kid. And now she's really, really keen on the subject. She believes Paul McCartney's dead, and she's right about that. She believes all kinds of other things. Now, what she's done is she started a podcast. It's on the BBC. It's actually on BBC Radio 1. You can actually download it from or listen to it on the site. Now, you know I'm not a fan of the BBC, but I do listen to this. I think they're quite good, actually, these podcasts. They're quite amusing, because she's a true believer and her fiancé is like a big skeptic. And they have arguments. I don't know how much the BBC will let them say, though. They may have to go independent eventually. But it's an interesting thing, because the panel of 4 women are like really, really patronising, and they're tolerant, and they're head nodding the way the BBC do, you know. But then one of the panel, Nadia Sawalha, who's a famous actress, she's on this panel. She says that her older sister is a conspiracy theorist. Yeah. So presumably this is why Nadia is an actor and her older actress, and her older sister is not. But she's, oh yeah, Christmas dinners, you know, she's always talking about all kinds of things. 9/11 was an inside job, aliens, JFK, etc. You know. Well, just goes to show, doesn't it? There are tinfoil hat wearing loonies everywhere. You know, and I must respect this Scarlett Moffatt. I mean, hats off to her. Respect to her for what she's done. It's not easy for someone in her position to start talking about these things. It is very difficult, and because you know they'll make her the laughing stock of the town. You know, they really will. I mean, people like me, you know, we can get away with it because we're pretty much unknown outside the UFO paracon sphere. But you know, Scarlett Moffatt, everyone who watches, what is it, Love Island or whatever piece of shit she's on, something, you know, these really extra like light entertainment programs, they're all going to go, oh, it's you're the one who believes in aliens, my dad thinks you're crazy, you know, that sort of thing, you know. It's like David Icke talks about this experience he had. So, you know, respect to Scarlett Moffatt for what she did. I do listen to the podcast. I think it's pretty good. It's called Scarlett Moffatt. Scarlett Moffatt Wants to Believe, it's called. And you get it on BBC Radio 1. You get it on BBC iPlayer. It's worth listening to. So, what else has been happening in the world of exopolitics and disclosure? That's not the end of the exopolitical news. I have a little bit of extra stop press material for you here. And this first one is this amazing letter. Now, this letter is from somebody who I think might become like a new kind of ally to Steve Bassett. Now, Steve, of course, has been campaigning for all this time. He's been campaigning for all this time for there to be a proper disclosure hearing in the US government. He's been doing this for many, many years. And of course, it's sooner or later somebody will listen to him, somebody will hear him, somebody will take him on board. Now, all that effort that he's put into it, all that lobbying effort is paying off, I think, because there's a chap called Mark Walker, who is a congressman. I'm going to say congressman, I'm politically incorrect, but,
who really seems to be taking on board the kinds of things that Steve is saying. So your dedicated work is not in vain, Steve, definitely. And I've got a letter here. This is a letter that he wrote. This is a letter he wrote to a guy called Richard Spencer. Now, this is the Secretary of the US Navy. Not to be confused with the alt-right Richard Spencer, the guy with the suit and the funny haircut. This is the Honourable Richard Spencer, Secretary of the US Navy. And he says, I'll try and do a sort of voice. What kind of voice can I give Mr. Walker? I don't know, I'll do a sort of posh governmental voice. I'm not an American one, but a sort of posh one. Secretary Spencer. In the recent days, members of Congress and the public have seen press reports regarding unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP. Yeah, they do. So I'm just I'm doing that funny voice, so you'll know when I'm reading from the letter, and you'll know when I'm giving commentary here. UAP, of course, is the word that everyone uses now. It's the sort of official term for UFOs now. They can't use UFOs anymore, even though UFO was originally, if it goes back to the Robertson panel in 1952, it was an original official US government word. But of course, it's the word UFO, that the acronym UFO is now associated with nutcases like me, isn't it? You know, the tinfoil hat wearing, all the other things that I do. You know, the Win Keaches of this world, no offence, sitting on a hillside staring at the sky. So, for that reason, they changed it to UAP. Yes. This is for unidentified aerial phenomena engaging with or encountering our naval aviators. Talking about the ATIP footage, of course. The reports mention the existence of these encounters both domestically and abroad during various missions and trainings. We have also seen statements made by the Department of Defense regarding steps taken by the Navy to draft new guidelines for aviators to report these occurrences. Yes, indeed, as I've reported on Hapanwo before, which of course means, well, they're not exactly unreal, are they? You see, there's all kinds of theories associated with the skeptics say it's all nothing. The hey man, I've been there posers say it's all disinformation. But really, when you look at the facts, nothing. The only thing that fits, the only key that unlocks all the doors to this mystery, is that they are dealing with an objectively real phenomenon. That's the only thing I can think about which would fit that particular scenario. Additionally, there have been reports of significant investments in advanced aerospace technologies, like the recorded UAP encountered by China. Right, yeah, I think, what's he referring to? There's several instances that we could talk about here, but it's interesting he brings up China here. I mean, you can see already that he's making a desperate attempt not to be too explicit over what he means. Now, there's been several instances in space with China, because they have, of course, they're the third country to put astronauts in space with their own launch systems. I mean, obviously space is now international, but you know, they actually got their own launch systems. He goes on. Based on pilot accounts, encounters with these UAPs often involve complex flight patterns and advanced maneuvering, which demand extreme advances in quantum mechanics, nuclear science, electromagnetics, and thermodynamics. Well, I don't know about quantum mechanics now, but certainly, I mean, again, he doesn't actually say, he says nuclear science, electromagnetics, thermodynamics. I would say gravity is the key thing here. Control of gravity. And again, he doesn't want to say, he doesn't want to tell Richard Spencer anything too obvious. If the accounts are true, the unidentified crafts, he says crafts with an S on the end, which is not the correct plural. Craft is singular and plural are both the same. Oh God, I'm being a bloody pedant now, aren't I? Yeah. Could pose a serious security risks to our military personnel and defence apparatus. Well, duh. I mean, anything that can do what these can, land inside nuclear compounds, switch off nuclear weapons, sail right into the middle of very carefully defended airspace which surrounds an aircraft carrier. Now, an aircraft carrier doesn't sail alone, it's accompanied by various ships. There's usually like 2 or 3 escorts, which have radar, they have sonar, They have magnetic support measures which detect incoming radar and radio frequencies. They have, of course, the aircraft that patrol the skies. They usually have a submarine below them. These, obviously, that is to protect the aircraft carrier. Now, these crafts, plural, can get through this. There's not many. I mean, obviously, an enemy naval force could get through. If an enemy naval force could get through, then you're in trouble. And the whole purpose of it is to stop that happening. These things can get through far easier. I mean, as you saw from the ATIP footage, the pilots were able to, as David Fravor talks about, they were able to intercept these, to spot them, to detect them, and to intercept them. But then the Tic Tacs and things, they evaded interception with a remarkable ease. One of the pilots, I think it was Fravor himself, talks about going into banking the aircraft, and this thing just matched his movements perfectly. And they could also represent a tremendous opportunity for advancements in science and technology that can contribute to public good. Whoa, Mr. Walker, Representative Walker, are you suggesting something anti-gravity or free energy here? Contributing to public good? Are you trying to not to say it though, aren't you? You're trying to hint to Mr. Spencer, aren't you? The detailed news of the encounters comes on the heels of an announcement by the Department of Defense in 2017 that noted the end of the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program, ATIP, which was tasked with investigating UAP encounters. Yes, this AATIP, this particular governmental organisation, which apparently didn't exist according to the 2011, or was it the 2011 disclosure petition, where the White House actually denied that any organisation, it or any other organisation like it, ever existed, and hadn't since the closure of Project Blue Book in 1969. They were lying. As a member of the House Committee on Homeland Security and the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Intelligence and Counterterrorism, these reports are concerning from a national airspace and domestic security perspective. Honestly, this guy Walker, he's got the most amazing power of understatement. I mean, I'm giving him a sort of posh English accent, but with that power of understatement, maybe he is English. I mean, maybe he certainly has English roots if you can understate things like that, you know. While I am encouraged by the Navy's proactive decision to draft new guidelines for reporting, I'm concerned these reports are not being fully investigated and understood. Well, you wouldn't. Maybe they are, but they're not telling you, Mr. Walker. Maybe they are, but they're keeping it from you, old son. What about that? Since the decision to end the ATIP, has the department continued to both log reports and sightings and fully investigate the origins of the accounts? It's both to log or to log both. Come on, you can't split infinitives, right? Oh my God! Stop it, Ben! Stop it! Stop being the grammar police. Does the department continue to dedicate resources to tracking and investigating claims? Well, would they tell you? Again, this is the question. If so, what measure? Has the department found physical evidence or otherwise that substantiates these claims? Wow, it's physical evidence. Now you're getting into the Bob Bigelow stuff, aren't you? Because you know Bob Bigelow, he was a part of ATIP, wasn't he? He was working secretly for ATIP. Going on about the various pieces of debris that were found, and his job was to analyse them. He had that hangar at Bigelow Aerospace, didn't he? Lastly, does the department have any information regarding private companies or foreign nations who have made significant advancements in aerophysics? Oh, you devious little so-and-so. You are so clever. I mean, this is what he's saying here. Lastly, that sentence I just read, lastly, does the department have any information regarding private companies or foreign nations who have made significant advancements in aerophysics? What he's saying here is, come on, admit it. They're not Chinese or Russian, are they? They come from somewhere slightly more exotic. He's saying it again. He's saying it in a way like he's not saying it. You know, he's a real what's the word? He's a crafty what? He's a crafty maneuver. This is. He's a very clever strategic maneuverer. Anyway, we believe the answers to these questions are vital to our national security and scientific research, and of significant public interest. Thank you for your immediate attention to this matter. We look forward to working with you on this important matter to ensure our domestic security. Mark Walker, Member of Congress. Repetition of matter. Oh, that's bad writing. Stop it, Ben, stop it. I'm in a pedantic mood today. The thing about it is, though, all the questions he asked, it's possible that Spencer won't tell him because he doesn't have a need to know. It's possible that Richard Spencer does not have a need to know. In which case, this letter is not going to get very far. However, the very fact that a member of Congress has written this letter is fantastic, and I want to congratulate Mark Walker for doing this. I think Steve Bassett does have a friend in Congress now, at least one, and I hope that he'll do much more. I hope he'll go much further. So, well done, Mr. Walker. I'm not American, but if I was, I would vote for you. Right, this is interesting. There's a lawsuit just been launched. Now, I have heard about this. I've heard about this from somebody I know who is familiar with this particular story. Now, this is to do with the Sheffield Incident. Now, all right, there's several things that could be called the Sheffield Incident, but this might confuse you a bit because of place names. This is something that happened in Sheffield. Now, Sheffield, of course, it's a city in the North Country of England, but it's also a city in Massachusetts, a town in Massachusetts, USA. To confuse matters further, it's actually in Berkshire County. Again, I mean, when I first saw this, I thought they were talking about Sheffield. Hang on, Sheffield's not in Berkshire; it's in West Yorkshire. Anyway, or South Yorkshire, I can't remember. Anyway, there's a very interesting thing happened in 1969. There was an incident where a man called Thomas Reed, a 9-year-old boy, and his whole family were basically abducted. There was a classic type UFO abduction. They were taken from their car, taken aboard the craft, and all kinds of things like that. So you can look it up. You can look up exactly what happened. But the point here is that in the part where this actually happened in the town, there was a decision in 2015 to put a monument up to commemorate this. And I know a lady, actually she's an English lady, but she goes regularly to the United States to go sky watching. She's a member of a sky watching team in the States, and she was talking about this to me. Now this caused a bit of a problem though, because there was some kind of tussle involving the planning permission and things like that. And this all came to a head last year sometime. What happened last year was the monument was removed. A group of workmen came away and they took the monument away. And that was bad. That was pretty bad. Apparently there was some confusion. There was some complaints about it getting in the way. Apparently it was obstructing a public footpath or something like that. And they took it away. But now, when I look at the pictures, you can see quite clearly there is a path there, but the monument was actually about 6 feet away from the path, so I don't know what they're talking about there. But anyway, there is now a lawsuit to try and get the monument reinstated, to get it put back where it was before. And it's being led by Thomas Reed himself, who's now an adult, and there's several law firms involved. And you know what American courts are like, the laws and the solicitors and things like that, the way they go on. So we'll see what happens, but it's nice they did put a monument up. I mean, if it's really not causing any problem, I don't see what the issue is. Obviously I'm not a local, I don't know this story firsthand, but from what I can see and from what my friend has told me, who goes there regularly, it's all a big storm in a teacup, and hopefully the monument will be returned soon.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Panwo TV viewers, that has been the latest instalment in my series UFO Disclosure 2020. Will 2020 be the year of disclosure? I don't know yet, but if it is, you can be sure you will hear it first, live and exclusive on Panwo TV. Okay guys, I'm going to be away if you don't see a video from me for a few days, don't worry, I'm going away somewhere. I won't tell you where, but you probably better guess, and just watch the various channels that you know, people like us like watching, and you may even see me on them, because I do plan to be appearing on someone else's channel over the next few days. Now, I don't know if any of you saw my community announcement, but a couple of you replied, which is really great. Next Wednesday, July the 8th, is World Disclosure Day. So what I wanted to ask you guys was, what would you think if I did a really cool UFO Disclosure Day live stream? Which would be good. I could do one on Facebook, I think I'll probably do one on Facebook and then one on YouTube. Do both. I really want to make a big thing of it, because this is really great. This is the Paradigm Research Group World Disclosure Day, and I want to make the best of it. So please do check the community page and see my notice and let me know what you think. I think most of you I think will be pretty keen on it, and I will be posting a notice for that live stream shortly before it next Wednesday. So that'll probably be the next video, actually. In the meantime, thank you very much all of you for watching Panwo TV. Back again soon. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.